Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is part 2 of our Falcon and Winter Soldier season finale open spoiler discussion. Now, of course, we did part 1 on Friday. I said we would clear up and get through all the remaining questions and thoughts and observations and speculations and evaluations that you guys sent in about the finale of Falcon and Winter Soldier on Sunday, and here we are on Sunday doing that. So basically, for those of you who don't know, this is an open spoiler discussion. So if you have not seen the finale of Falcon and the Winter Soldier yet, you might want to come back to this. Make sure you go see part 1 first and then come back here and watch part 2 again. But you know what you're getting into, so if you're okay with that, let's start rolling and getting caught up on all the remaining, observations, evaluations, reviews, thoughts, speculations, and questions that you guys sent in during our open spoiler discussion on Friday. So let's not waste any time and get right to it. We're going to start getting caught up here with Ryan Gerger, who writes, John, everyone was right. Sharon is the power broker, just like I said. Well, I mean, listen, here's the funny thing about these shows. Everybody lines up to talk about what they got right, and everybody clearly ignores everything they got wrong. Yes, many people thought Sharon was going to be the power broker. I myself said that it's a bad theory, but it's the best of the theories that are out there. Because I thought all the theories about who was going to be power broker, I thought, Wilson Fisk was a terrible theory. I thought Thunderbolt Ross was a terrible theory. I thought Bucky's therapist, because there was a lot of people thought Bucky's therapist. We thought that was terrible. But I also said that I think Sharon Carter being power broker is a bad theory, but they're all bad theories, and this just happens to be the least bad of the theories. And we talked about all the reasons why we thought, including the fact that a lot of supervillains' origins come from a place of betrayal. A supervillain origin often comes from a place when they felt betrayed by a loved one, by a close friend, by an organization, by a team, whatever. And they did a lot in Falcon the Winter Soldier to show us that Sharon felt betrayed by her country. And that turned her. And turns out she was. So there you go. All right, Ryan also writes, Sam's new suit looks great. I think it looks awesome. His new suit has bigger wings. It does seem like the wings have a wider wingspan now. I really liked his old suit, probably meant his old suit too. Yeah, I liked his old suit as well, but I thought this suit was fantastic. I thought it looked great. Now, I'm sure it'll go through some changes. Almost all the costumes go through changes from movie to movie or even movie to show. So I'm sure it'll go through some changes, but I thought it looked fantastic. I really did. I thought it looked absolutely great. All right, next up, we've got, who are we at here? We are at Armchair Fandom, who writes, hey John, love the show. Finale was way too predictable. Example, why not just show Sam's suit last week? Also, Carli deserved no sympathetic ending. I disagree. I don't think it was predictable in the least. I mean, other than the good guys are going to win, Carli's going to be stopped. I mean, of course, that happens in all the shows. But I don't think it's that Carli, I think that's an oversimplistic view that Carli deserved no sympathy. Did Carli go over the line? Yes. Did Carli need to be stopped? Yes. Did Carli need to face justice? Yes. All these things are true. But I feel like Sam, at the end in his big speech, he was talking to people like yourself, Armchair Fandom, about this when he said, everybody wants to throw out the labels, but nobody wants to actually do the hard work of stopping and asking why. Remember, when we first met Carli, what was the first thing we saw Carli doing? The first thing when we knew it was Carli, the first thing we saw her doing was her and her super soldier flag smashers, when Sam and Bucky first encounter them, what were they doing? They were stealing medicines and vaccines, what we later found out to be taking to these camps because of all these displaced people did not have enough food. They didn't have medicines. They didn't have vaccines. These people were forgotten. These were the people that Carli and the Flag Smashers started out their crusade for, was to speak for and be a champion for these people who were being displaced, ignored, marginalized, and were suffering, and the governments of the world didn't seem to care. Like, I'm not saying any of that excuses Carli's actions. Of course not. Remember, I start this by saying she needed to be stopped. She needed to face justice. All that is true. But, we can't become what Sam was warning us against becoming. Getting just caught up in the black and white and the labels of it and never stopping to ask the question why. Because that whole thing about her was trying to feed these people and make them feel like they counted again, which is why so many people around the world in the MCU rallied to her cause. So I think there is sympathy to be felt for somebody who gets caught up in the right cause and then ends up losing themselves and losing their values and go too far like Carli did. And she faced the end that she needed to face, but I think there were still a lot of lessons there. Anyway, so I kind of see it the way Sam saw it a little bit. All right, next up here we've got Gabe Campbell, who writes, Sam taking Isaiah Bradley to the Captain America Museum was probably the moment of the series for me. It was one of my favorites. It was a beautiful, fantastic moment. Overall, Marvel again knocked it out of the park, but WandaVision is on another level. I agree. I thought episodes 1 through 3 were good. But I didn't really start to love Falcon the Winter Soldier until episodes 4, 5, and 6. Overall, I still think I agree with you. I think WandaVision was the better series overall, but Falcon the Winter Soldier to me was a big win. Even if it didn't kick into high gear with episodes 4, 5, and 6, I was still enjoying episodes 1, 2, and 3, but they did bring it up to the next level. But I agree. WandaVision, to me, is the better of the two series, but they're both wins. They're both big wins. All right, James Hoffman writes, great line. The only power that I have is that I believe we can do better. Love the hopeful message of the series that we can build a better world. And right there is one of the things that I really love about Sam Wilson. I said in part 1 of the spoiler discussion that what I was afraid of them doing, because, I didn't want them to make any new character Captain America. I thought they should just Steve Rogers as Captain America and that's it. But I knew they were going to make Sam Captain America. And the one thing I was worried about was that they were going to try to turn Sam into Steve. He's going to get the super soldier serum and he's going to be able to do this just like Steve and that just like Steve. But instead, they pleasantly surprised me. Not only did they have Sam refusing to take the super soldier serum. Well, not that he was offered, but he wouldn't have taken it anyway. It says he wouldn't have taken it. So he's not going to be a super soldier. They really leaned into into what makes Sam unique. I just love that. He is a counselor. He's a diplomat. He wants to talk his way out of things before doing anything else, which is a direct juxtaposition against John Walker, who even Battlestar said to John Walker, said, you can't just punch your way out of situations anymore, right? That was him. And for him to end on a line like that, the only power I have is that I believe we can do better. That's a very Sam Wilson thing to say. So yeah, they gave him the title of Captain America, but they didn't try to make him Steve. And I think that's what I was worried they were going to do, and they didn't do it. They kept Sam's uniqueness. He's very, very different from Steve. He is not Steve Rogers, and I love the way they did that, and they kept leaning into those things that made him unique. Instead of trying to make him more like what Steve was, they just leaned more into what made Sam Sam, and I love that they did that. All right, Frankie writes, this may be the most consistently emotional hour of MCU content. Even his appearance in the new suit made me tear up. I don't know that I thought the finale was my favorite episode of the series. I thought it was probably my second favorite episode of the series. Episode 4 for me probably still remains my favorite episode of the series. But still, and I love the outfit. The outfit was great. These things can often go south very quick, but I thought it was everything that outfit should be. And again, even the outfit with the wings leaned more into Sam staying Sam than trying to make him Steve. So I thought that was great, Frankie. All right, next up, Moon 7 Willow writes, Sharon Carter's power broker wasn't much of a surprise. Listen, I don't know. It wasn't much of a surprise, but there were only a few options on the table. Well, let's talk about that in a second. I noticed they used the trope of villains speaking of themselves in the third person with her. That happens a lot. But listen, when it comes to Power Broker, there were only two legitimate possibilities. There really were only two legitimate possibilities. Because one of the things this show was not, the reason why I rejected the idea of it being Thunderbolt Ross or, Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin Wilson Fisk or Mandarin or anything like that was because it just would have been out of nowhere and completely random. Right? It just would have been completely rando. Just out of nowhere, boom. You might as well have said the Soup Nazi from Seinfeld is the power broker. No power for you. Like they could, that would have been as equally random as a lot of those names. So really that left us with, well, I take it back, three viable potential options. One was Zemo, although I never thought that was a real option. I think most people didn't, but at least Zemo wouldn't have been completely random. He was there in the series. It's tied together, all that kind of stuff. The other was Sharon Carter. And the other was somebody we had never seen before, a totally brand new character, which is what I thought they were going to do. I thought if it's going to be anybody of the theories, it'll be Sharon Carter. But really what I thought it probably would be was the only other remaining option, which is nobody. It would have been nobody we've ever seen or heard of before, which I would have been fine with. But they went with Sharon. But again, to say, not really, well, there weren't any other options. Thunderbolt Ross was not a real option. Mandarin was not a real option. Wilson Fisk was not a real option. Sharon was a real option. Zemo was a legitimate option, and nobody was a real option. Other than that, that was it. So, it was really kind of limited there. But anyway, Power Broker, at the end of the day, Power Broker is not an important figure in Falcon and Winter Soldier. Nor was it ever treated like it was an important element of Falcon and Winter Soldier. Power Broker, by every stretch, was a side character in this story. Far less significant, obviously, than Bucky and Sam. Far less significant than Zemo. Far less significant than Sharon. When we didn't know Sharon was that. Far less significant than Carli. I would definitely less significant than John Walker. I would even argue less significant than Lamar. So it's not like it was... The name of the show was Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Mystery of the Power Broker. It wasn't. It was a minor side story that was just going to be a setup for something later on, and I'm totally good with the way that it worked out, personally. All right, next up. Sean Stewart writes, disappointed that Agnes Abs Sharon... I have no idea what that means. Disappointed that Agnes Abs Sharon reveals... were obvious to me and everyone. Not really obvious, but anyway, less disappointing if Sharon is actually Skrull. Okay, can I say something about that first? What is with everybody's obsession with Skrulls? Look, I haven't said this yet before, but let me just say it. Skrulls are stupid. Skrulls are dumb. I do not understand what everybody's theories seem to revolve around Skrull or X-Men. That's going to be how they introduce mutants. That guy's going to be a Skrull. And that's how Wolverine's going to be here. And that guy's... What is with the obsession of Skrull? It would have been idiotic if they made Sharon a Skrull. I'll just say it right up. I'll just say it right now. Skrull fans around the world are gasping. It would have been absolutely idiotic if they made Sharon a Skrull. It would have been the dumbest thing in the world they could have done. And the reason why it would have been the dumbest thing in the world they could have done is two things. Number one, Skrulls are just dumb. But the second and more importantly is this. There is actual, real, meaty story being told here with Sharon. Sharon, a woman who has dedicated her life to service, coming up in the shadow of and under the tutelage of one of the greatest agents ever in U.S. history in Peggy Carter. She grew up with that lineage, with that family legacy. She always fought to do the right thing, standing on the side of Captain America, even when it meant breaking the rules to do what she knew was right. And what was her reward? She was betrayed by her country. She lost everything. She was forced to go on the run. She lost her family, and it left her bitter and angry and realizing, what was all that for? What was all that for that I did? All the good things I did, doing things the right way, following all the rules, fulfilling all the orders I got. And what did I get out of it? I got stabbed in the back by my country. So you know what? Double F's to you, country. I'm going to take then. I'm going to take. If you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to take it. And I'm going to become something else. And she becomes there is really good, rich narrative story being told there with Sharon. She is a Skrull. Destroys all of it. It destroys all of it. It takes away all that richness. It takes away all that great narrative. It takes away all that juicy story. It takes it all away and just pisses on it. If they just go, she's a Skrull. It would have been idiotic. Anyway, I know a lot of you disagree with me, and that's cool. That's why we're all fans together. We all have different opinions, and we share our different opinions, and sometimes we passionately disagree. I think the whole Skrull thing is stupid. I really do. But, I mean, I like the way they were used in Captain Marvel. I did. But they seem like a convenient cop-out to just do anything stupid. And yeah, anyway, I just got to say, had they made Sharon a Skrull, it would have completely ruined the whole show. I take that back. It wouldn't have ruined the whole show, but it would have completely ruined a fascinating character turn that they're doing with Sharon. Something that in the 12, 13-year history of the MCU, we've never really seen them do this. A character who has been a hero to us on screen in multiple projects, now turning bad. We haven't really seen that in the MCU before. Sharon's kind of a first in that way. I'm not just talking somebody who appeared on screen and then 5 minutes later they're I mean, like, she's been on screen in several movies as this heroic figure, and now, because of all the things, the wrongs she has suffered, she's turned bad. I love it. I think it's rich, and it would have been ruined by making it a Skrull thing. Anyway, that's just kind of my take on it. But Sean follows up with, if Sharon did go dark, her fighting Sam wouldn't mean as much as her versus old man Steve. Your aunt and I are very disappointed. Bam, knocks her out. Maybe yes, maybe no, but I don't think the point here was to create a new arch nemesis for Sam. I don't think that was it. I really think Sharon has been set up to be the antagonist for Iron Wars, because what they've already told us, which is fundamentally going to be the War Machine movie, because what they've already told us is the fundamental story of that War Machine show, Iron Wars, is that what happens when all this incredible technology gets into the wrong hands. And what was Sharon Carter's post-credit scene in Falcon the Winter Soldier? Guess what? We don't have super soldiers anymore, but I'm going to be able to get my hands on all the technology. Start lining up the buyers, right? So, I mean, I don't know that she's going to be an antagonist, but the bottom line is I didn't think she's setting it up for that. And again, we need to stop treating Power Broker and everything as if Power Broker was a major part of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It never was. It was never meant to be. It's a side character. It's a side issue, non-important, maybe the 7th, 8th, or 9th most important character in the entire series. So I don't think it's that important. So I disagree, Sean. I disagree. Although if old man Steve did show up and said the line, Ann and I are very disappointed in you, young lady. Go to your room without your supper. You know, okay, that would have been pretty fun. I admit on that, Sean, I got to say I'm in complete agreement with you. All right, next up. Shadow Ninja writes, they handled Sam becoming Cap perfectly. They really did. Again, I never wanted anybody else to be Cap, but if you're going to do it, they did it as well as it could be done, in my opinion. So you're right. Have these small moments for him, then give him a big moment, his confronting the senators, I'm sold on Sam. And yes, again, you know what? Again, he couldn't even beat Batroc. I mean, Batroc is a badass, but he couldn't beat Batroc. He's not going to win the day by single-handedly taking on Thanos. He wins the day by being Sam. Yeah, he helped save the people in the truck. He saved the helicopter, folks. He did a lot of very heroic things. But the big win was him then talking to those members of the GRC, including the senator, and making them see and making them understand that you got to look wider. You have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And that is something that Steve couldn't have done. Steve would have saved the day and then moved on to save the day again later somewhere else. They really gave Sam that moment to shine, and I thought that was really good. Anyway, Shadow Ninja also writes, also, I was low-key wishing for a Spider-Man cameo. I'm very glad he didn't. Like a show up at the end, did I miss something type of thing, then call Sam Captain Falcon. I mean, a lot of people brought up, why doesn't Spider-Man show up? I mean, he lives in New York because of a million different reasons. Personally, I'm glad Spider-Man, I love Spider-Man. I love Tom Holland's Spider-Man. But I'm glad he didn't show up, because the name of the show is not Falcon and Winter Soldier and Spider-Man. It was Falcon and Winter Soldier. Keep the attention on them and this core story characters. Keep the story there. And I'm glad he didn't. I'll be honest with you, I'm glad he didn't show up. I mean, that would have been a funny moment, yes, but I'm glad they kind of kept it the way they did. All right, next up. Bamboozled writes, it's crazy how this show made me go from disliking Walker to cheering for him like a fangirl after he chose to save those people instead of going after Carli for killing his best friend. Yeah, again, that's one of the things that I've said that I've really loved about this Walmart Captain America. The fact that there's no black and white in this show. Like we were talking a little bit earlier about Carli. It's like she's more than just the villain of the show. There's a lot more to it. It's more complicated than that. The same is true of John Walker. He's a guy, when you go back and watch episode 2 again, and you really see where his heart is, he just wants to make people feel safe. He wants to do the job. He sees Steve Rogers as impossibly big shoes to fill, but he needs to try. And all that is there. Unfortunately, it's also mixed in with a lot of his issues and a lot of his weaknesses. And I love the fact that they never made it go black and white with him. And I predicted he would die heroically in the finale. He did have some heroism in the finale, didn't die, so I was wrong about that part, but I thought they would give him a big heroic moment, and sure enough, they did. All right, next up. Kian Shingler writes, no one said it on here, but is also worth mentioning is Zemo's line in episode 5 to Bucky. I don't blame you for handing me in. You did what you had to do, or something to that effect. Was one of the biggest insights into who Zemo is as a person and how his mind works, almost as much as the serum smashing instead of taking it. No, see, that's one of the things, pardon me, about Zemo in this series is Zemo is not a power-hungry villain, right? His ideals may put him on the opposite side of the right thing sometimes, but he's always guided by his principles. That's it. Like most villains, when they had the opportunity to see the Super Soldier series, says, yes, more power for me. But that's not what Zemo does, because it's against his ideals. And even the whole thing with Bucky, like a lot of people thought he was going to go after Bucky. And one of the things I said was, but he has no issue with Bucky. Bucky never crossed him. He's the one who crossed Bucky. And he knows that. You even remember, and I think it was in episode 3 when Bucky shows up at Zemo's prison. You know, one of the first things Zemo says to him is, by the way, for what it's worth, I am sorry. But you were a means to a necessary end. But I am sorry that it had to involve you. You know, you're right. They always showed it that his principles, although sometimes his principles put himself on the wrong side of what is right, he will always follow those principles. And that was kind of a key to that as well. All right, Timothy writes, so Sharon is going to have access to all kinds of government stuff while secretly going behind their backs to benefit those on her side. Okay, Sharon, let the invasion begin. Yeah, again, I don't think she's a Skrull. I don't think it has anything to do with Secret Invasion. I think this has everything to do with Iron Wars. Again, I don't know that for a fact. Let's be clear. I do not know that for a fact. That is simply me as a fan speculating. But I'm going to be very surprised if it's not a big lean into Iron Wars. All right, next up. Lucid Freeman writes, or Frem, I should say. Don't look at me. I do what he does, only slower. Well, Sam, safe to say you are the faster one now. Well, actually, he's not. Anyway, how far he's come. Thank you for doing the show, John. No, he's great. And again, they never try to make him Steve, and I love that. He doesn't have Steve's speed or strength or agility or whatever, but he's got other gifts and other skills that they really used and highlighted in this show. He's not Captain America. You know, he's not Steve, but he's Captain America. The Sam Wilson Captain America. It's a very, very different Captain America, but they're going to call him Captain America anyway. But they really leaned into those things that made Sam special without trying to just mimic the things that made Steve special. And I appreciated that very much. All right, next up. Jake Pyle writes, loved the episode. Best episode of the season for me. To me, it's the second best. Great action. Wasn't expecting Sharon to be power broker. Can't wait for season 2. Yeah, there were like somebody wrote in earlier, said everybody knew it was going to be. No, a lot of people really didn't think it was going to be Sharon. And for good reasons. There were some good reasons not to believe she was going to be the power broker. But it was a nice surprise to me. I thought, again, not the best episode of the season. I thought it was the second best. I still think episode 4 was the best episode yet. But they nailed the landing. They stuck the landing. It was great. They gave us a fantastic moment with Yuri, fantastic moment with Isaiah, Sam embracing who he is and really communicating why he decided to embrace it. It was a great ending. I loved it. Anyway, Jake also writes, is it just me or were you disappointed when you saw Sam's costume? Oh, no, not at all. I thought the costume was great. I didn't like it at first, but I liked it more and more throughout the episode. I thought the costume looked great. Again, I don't like this need that Marvel seems to have to turn everybody into a mini version of Iron Man. Everybody's got to have a suit with a built-in AI, heads-up display with whether they call it Red Wing or whatever Spider-Man calls his AI, or, Tony called, what did he call it, Sunday later on, and then earlier he called it Jarvis, whatever. I don't like this little trope that everybody has to be some kind of version of Iron Man, but the costume I thought was awesome. I looked at it, and when I watched it the second time, I paused it on that moment. I'm like, that just looks like a comic book hero. I thought it looked great, but that was me. All right, Jake also writes, what was your favorite part of the episode? Zemo's Alfred was my favorite part. When the truck carrying the Flag Smasher prisoners blew up and the camera panned around and you saw Alfred. I don't know that his name is Alfred. He's basically Alfred for Zemo. He's not Batman's Alfred. He's Zemo's Alfred. And you realize, oh my God, Zemo's Alfred blew up the truck. Zemo wins. That was my favorite moment of the episode. All right. James Gold writes, I'm supposed to be emotional over Carli and Isaiah. I was over Isaiah, not as much Carli, but watching U.S. Agent get played is the worst. He's so excited. Yeah, I never felt emotional for Carli. I mean, Carli's character journey took her to its inevitable end, right? I think Sam summed it up best in his speech at the end to the GRC leaders and that senators. Like, you got to ask why. Why did this girl take on the most powerful nations in the world? What motivated her to do that? Because she saw people suffering. She saw people being marginalized and forgotten and neglected and hungry and sick and cold and not having their needs met by governments of the world who were playing power broker with their lives. And that led her to a dark place that her destination was inevitable. So I didn't feel emotional when she died, but you hear Sam talking about it, you have to get caught up in the question of why. Why did it happen? Why did she become that? And why did millions around the world rally to her cause? And I think that's a very important distinction that they had there. Okay, anyway, next up. Alex Burgos writes, being a huge comic book fan myself, I get Sam's costume, but for me, this is a prime example of something that should have been me adapted. Should have been me adapted? Maybe you meant more adapted, no verisimilitude. I don't know. Listen, when you understand that Bucky is the one who sent in the request for the suit, and when you understand Bucky's passion for the symbol of what Steve stood for, especially with the shield, what was he going to ask the Wakandans to make? He was going to ask them to make something that was a real overt expression of that symbol. So to me, that costume design was verisimilitude. It's exactly what Bucky would have asked that suit to be. Now, we didn't get to see Bucky talking to Io and putting out the specific specifications for the suit, but you understand by listening to Bucky talk earlier with Sam about why the symbol was so important to him, what that shield means to him, what Steve's legacy and Steve, the symbolism of what Steve stood for was important. Well, what else is he going to ask Io to put into that suit? And so for me, actually, Alex, I got to say, to me, it was a moment of verisimilitude because that's exactly what Bucky would have asked for. But anyway, that's just me. You saw it differently. I respect that, but that's why it worked for me. All right. Jason A. writes, over under 40% that we're getting Young Avengers. I'm going to go under 40, but at one point I would have said under 10, and I wouldn't say under 10 anymore, but I'll still go under 40. I wasn't putting that odds so high before, but I feel like Eli got quite a bit of screen time he didn't need. I feel like he got zero attention. He was there. Like, he was never the focus of any scene, right? Like with with Hawkeye's daughter, there are scenes focused on her. I never felt like Eli was the center focus of any scene. He was just kind of there in the outskirts a bit. So I don't know. Again, I think higher than I used to think, but I'll still take under 40 for now. Murray Reich writes, I got to admit, when the fighting on the ground was going, sorry, something went down the wrong pipe. When the fighting on the ground was going, I was like, this would be a perfect time/moment for New York City Spider-Man to show up. Again, I think that would have ruined it. This was not about Spider-Man. This is Falcon and Winter Soldier. Keep the focus where the focus needs to be. There's no need to throw in rando MCU characters in there for no reason whatsoever. But don't get me wrong, I probably would have grinned if it did, because I do love me some Tom Holland Spider-Man. But I'm personally, Murray, I'm glad they didn't. All right. Spark the producer writes, excellent episode. Loved it. That's the Black Falcon there. Nah, that's Captain America. I really love the shield wings combo Sam was doing. Yeah, listen, he does not have super strength. He doesn't have super speed. He doesn't have super agility. He doesn't have super natural healing. So the things he gets, he uses creatively and he uses well. He does that stuff well. And so I agree with him, man. The combination of the way he used the shield, plus the way he used the wings and the outfit, is a great combo. It looked great. Spark also writes, that moment at the Smithsonian was a tearjerker. It was a great ending. Yeah, and it came up in the pregame show we did before the finale. Somebody wrote in and said, wouldn't it be great to see Isaiah at the Captain America Museum at the end? It's like they did that. They went there. Mwah! So well done. Such a good moment. Murray writes, Sharon Carter being the power broker and now a big problem for the MCU going forward reminds me of Tony Almeida from 24. Tony Almeida from 24, where he turned bad later on. Yes, it did have a little bit of that, didn't it? I was like, Tony Almeida, from 24. It does have a little bit of that. And again, this is the first time the MCU has done something like this with one of their heroic characters. We haven't really seen this go before, and I'm excited about it. I think there are exciting things laying ahead, probably Iron Wars with Sharon Carter. It's going to be cool to see. All right, Timothy Platt writes, John looks so happy to have a purpose again. That's nice. Oh no, they're going to totally exploit the crap out of him, aren't they? Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah, U.S. agent is going to end up on the wrong side of things, even if it's not really his intention to end up on the wrong side of things. He is easily controllable. And I fear the good work he did in that finale is going to, man, yeah, they're going to play him. They're going to play him, Timothy. All right, James Ranger writes, I can finally say now that Sam Wilson is Captain America. Is Sam Wilson is Captain America? Is Sam Wilson is Captain America? No, not really. Steve Rogers is still the true Captain America. I mean, even in the comics, Sam's not Captain America anymore. When, 15 years from now, when somebody says Captain America, we'll be thinking of Steve Rogers. Period. But that being said, the way they built narrative meaning into Sam taking on however short it may be. Maybe it'll be for 2 seasons and 1 or 2 movies or whatever, but the narrative reason and the narrative path in Falcon and the Winter Soldier that they laid out for Sam taking on the mantle of Captain America, I gotta say I was impressed with. I was impressed. I think it was after episode 5 that I said, you know what? After hearing, especially these exchanges between Sam and Bucky and Sam and Isaiah, I'm at a point now that, look, I still don't think anybody else should be called Captain America because that is that's Steve Rogers. But I'm not against it anymore because they just laid out such a great narrative reason. Like, I understand now why Sam at the end would say, you know, I can't win every fight. And I know that. But what was the purpose of all the sacrifice? And what was the purpose of what happened to this guy and this guy and this? And what was the purpose of all that if I don't keep fighting? Or at the end when he says, I'll be damned if anybody's going to tell me I can't fight for it. You know, it's like, they didn't get me there. They didn't get me all the way that I'd say, yeah, somebody else should be Captain America. No. But they brought me a long way. And saying, yeah, this makes sense. I still think it was the wrong thing to do, but I get it. And they did a great job of it. So when Sam like embraces it, it just felt like it served the story. And that's all I ever ask. If you, whatever you're going to do it in such a way that truly serves the story and serves the narrative path of the characters. And they did that. And I got to say, I was impressed. And when this show started, if you had told me, John, you're right, by the end, he is going to be Captain America, but John, you're going to feel okay about that by the time it happens. I would have said, no, you're crazy. I'm not going to feel good about that. I mean, I know that's what they're going to do, but I'm not going to feel good about it. They gave it narrative purpose and made it part of the character's journey. And I'm okay with it. Again, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, 7 years from now, when we say Captain America, the first word out of our mouths is going to be Steve Rogers. That's the name that's going to come out of our mouths. It's not going to be Bucky, because I'm sure at some point they're going to give him the shield too, at some point. But we're not going to say Bucky Barnes, and we're not going to say Sam Wilson, and we're not going to say John Walker. We're going to say Steve Rogers. But for now, for the next couple of years, they made me okay with Sam taking on that mantle. For now, it's still Steve's mantle. It's still his. But I'm actually okay with it. And I thought it was beautiful the way they handled it. Anyway, next up. Timothy writes, the only nitpick I have with this episode is I think that scene with Yuri should have been longer. No, it was perfect. It was perfect. Again, just a minor gripe. I loved this episode. No. I disagree. See, in the pregame show, somebody wrote in, I can't remember who, but somebody wrote in and said, John, I think you might be disappointed when they finally do that scene with Yuri. I think it's going to be a smaller scene than you think. I'm like, no. That's great. That's great. Because the only thing that scene needs to do is show us Bucky confronting his demons and going to Yuri and confessing to him. We don't need to see Yuri's reaction, because Yuri's reaction, hear me out, isn't important. How Yuri reacts to what Bucky tells him is not important to the story. It's not even important to Bucky's character journey. Bucky just taking the step of going and telling him. And I said, you know what I don't want? I don't want some big Disney moment where Yuri goes, oh, you killed my son, but hey, you're telling me the truth now. Come on, give me a big hug. I forgive you, big guy. I'm like, that would feel contrived and stupid and dumb. And so what did they do? They did what I thought was perfect. They showed us the part that mattered. Bucky taking that step. And then all we see is Yuri going, why? Like, why did you kill my son? And then that was it. Bucky leaves. We don't get some nice, clean and tidy Disney ending with everybody hugs and birds, animated birds flying around, and, a song being sung by a little skunk in the corner. Everybody forgives each other. Oh, it's so great. They didn't do that. They avoided that temptation, and they did what needed to be done and then moved on. And I loved that. So yeah, to me, I actually thought the way they handled that series, that moment with Yuri, I couldn't have asked for more. It was everything I think it should have been, and not an ounce more. So personally for me, Timothy, I thought it was really, really great. All right, next up, we've got James Ranger, who writes, 1 of 3. In all seriousness, despite Steve Rogers being my favorite hero in the Infinity Saga, this show masterfully takes a conventional concept and sells it with excellent execution. From tackling race with Isaiah to developing Sam's character as a counselor, plus Sam's speech at the end, has brought me to the point where I can put my fandom for Steve aside and really enjoy Sam as the new Cap. I think you just summed up what I was trying to say earlier better than I did, James. I agree. You know what I really would have made me turn against it is if they tried to turn Sam into Steve and then take on the Captain America mantle. That would have turned me off, but they didn't. They focused on what Sam is and his uniqueness, the strength he has as a counselor, as an arbitrator, as a diplomat. And the way they did it brought me to a surprising point that when it was all over, man, I'm good with Sam Wilson being called Captain America right now, because of that great work they did. So I bravo, James. You just articulated that beautifully. Beautiful job, James. All right. Spark writes, so Sharon is the power broker even after her pardon. Oh yeah. Because the pardon was, she manipulated it. She totally manipulated her way into that part. Like the country had betrayed her. The country betrayed her. So yes, that pardon was a part of her manipulation to take advantage of Sam, get that pardon, and put her in a position now that, because the damage was already done. The damage was done. So, and getting the pardon was not like some good act of faith from the government. She manipulated her way into getting that pardon for her own benefit. So yeah, damn right. Corbin Miller writes, so Steve is on the moon. I still think so. Yes, I think Steve is actually on the moon. Or why do they keep throwing that out there? I think look, obviously I don't know this, fan speculation, but I think we're going to end up finding out that Steve is on the moon. All right, Spark writes, Sam's new suit seems extremely padded. No Wakandan holographic wings, but still nice suit. I think it looks great. I think it looks fantastic. And, you know, newsflash, every superhero costume's a little padded, at least. So yeah, but I still thought it looked great, man. All right. Corbin Miller writes, it was Sharon all along. I mean, they got to do a song version of that. Absolutely. Corbin. Bam Bam writes, I really enjoyed this last episode and the whole show in general. Even though the show is mainly about Falcon and Bucky, John Walker was my favorite. Listen, I'll tell you what, I ended up, this damn Walmart Captain America, I ended up loving that character, man. I ended up loving that character. The multiple layers to him, the duality, the struggling to do the right thing and ending up doing horrifically bad things. I mean, I love the complexity of it. I love that there was not simple black and white. There were no easy answers. And I love that that was kind of embodied in John Walker. When I loved him and when I hated him, I always loved his character and the character's place in the story. And they did a great job with him. They really did. All right. That was Bam Bam. Next up, Sam Wright writes, genuinely thought post-credit was going to reveal Sharon as a Skrull. I'm so glad they didn't do that. That would have been so dumb. That would have been too similar to WandaVision, though, I guess. Zemo's butler scene shocked me. I'm telling you, the Zemo butler, I didn't have a bigger yelp. Like if my buddy Ryan was here and we're in the room right now, when he came home, I literally jumped out off the couch and yelled, it's Alfred, it's Zemo's Alfred. Still my number one absolute favorite moment of the episode. Still my favorite moment of the episode. All right. Al Renshaw writes, hey, John, do you think Walker will eventually get vibranium? No, I don't. Or maybe even adamantium shield. No, definitely not adamantium. This could be a way for them to introduce adamantium. No, they're not. They're going to introduce adamantium with Wolverine. They have no need, reason, or anything to introduce adamantium in any other way. It would almost be anticlimactic to me to introduce adamantium in some other way. You bring that in with Wolverine. So no, I don't think he's going to get vibranium, and I definitely don't think he's going to get adamantium. I'm not saying he won't because I don't know. But if you're asking me for my guess is no on both. Now, what actually happens could be different from what I'm guessing, but my guess is no on both. All right. Darth Grant writes, this just crossed my mind, but based on the end credits with Sharon, what if she is the villain of Armor Wars? That's exactly what I think is going to happen. Because she somehow got Tony's tech. Yeah, 100%. Again, if you look at what the synopsis of the upcoming Armor Wars series is, about what happens when all this fantastic, like Stark and everything technology falls into the wrong hands, What else were they setting up with Sharon at the end of Falcon Winter Soldier? I think that whole thing for her is now setting her up for being the main villain of Armor Wars. I could be wrong. Again, I don't know this. I'm just guessing, but that's exactly where my head's at, Darth. All right, CMG 2491 writes, "Hey, John. Wow, what an episode. Over under 50%. The next time we see Walker, they have a new shield for him made from newly discovered metal adamantium." Again, I was just talking about that a little bit earlier. I think that's a zero. It wouldn't be the first time Feige planted a small seed of future things to come, similar to how they did with Doctor Strange and Winter Soldier. But remember, the Doctor Strange thing in Winter Soldier, that was just a fun little thing. They weren't actually introducing Stephen Strange. I don't think they're going to do that at all. It would be, again, a completely random thing for no real purpose and reason that you don't need. And adamantium is a thing. It's not a character arc. It's not something you have to introduce. I think, listen, you would be robbing, I think, a lot of fans of adamantium being introduced with Wolverine if you just randomly threw it on a character like John Walker. And again, I could be completely wrong. Absolutely. This is just me and my own fan speculation thing, right? That's just me. I mean, I don't know any of that for a fact. They very well could do it, but I'm going to definitely lean, for now, I'm going to go on, nah. They're not going to do that. I think it would be a bad decision. Anyway, Raymond Verrata writes, "I hope they don't turn Sharon into a Skrull to explain her turn to the dark side." I was just explaining that myself. I completely agree. It makes sense of her being left out in the cold. It makes sense of her being left out in the cold after Civil War. Yeah, again, if you just take away her story, it would be the worst thing they could do, Raymond. So I'm 100%, like I said earlier, I'm 100% in agreement with you on that. All right, Marie Seifring writes, "The scene with Isaiah's grandson and Sam at the new museum exhibit was a lovely way to finish the storyline and was predicted by a viewer." Yeah, it was brought up in the pregame show. It was like, once it was brought up, I'm like, oh, it's got to end that way. Like, somebody brought that up and I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Yeah, it's got to end that way. There's no other way for this thing to end than bringing Isaiah to the museum and having him have his own monument there. Like, it was such a brilliant, I wish I remember the individual who sent it in. It was such a bang on the money thing that was just like eye-opening for a lot. It's like, of course that's the way it's got to end. It was such a good moment. Like, the only thing that would have made it better is if Steve showed up, put his hand on Isaiah's shoulder and said, "It's well-deserved," like, or anything like that. They didn't, and that's perfectly fine. The moment was beautiful. All right, Marie also writes, "Torres didn't redshirt. I was totally waiting for Torres to die. I was totally waiting. I was so certain that Torres was going to die. He's going to be a Star Trek redshirt. He was going to die. It would be an emotional moment for Sam. They didn't. A bunch of people were predicting he was going to become the new Falcon. Of course, they didn't do that either, but I really thought he was going to die. I admit it. I totally thought Torres was going to die. All right, Jose Miaz writes, they are working on Captain America 4. Yep, we'll talk about that tomorrow on the John Campea Show. Mello B writes, "I have a theory that's not regarding to Falcon the Winter Soldier. Thanos' double-edged sword is missing. Possibly it's in the hands of Sharon now, and she'll use it to make adamantium for the Wolverine. A bit much?" I would say yes, that's a bit much. Yes. I mean, Mello, you called it yourself. That's a big stretch. So I'll go down a limb there and say no. I don't think they're going to do that. Now watch. Remember this day, Mello. If that's what they ended up doing, you remember this and you send this back to me and said, "See, because you will deserve all the props in the world if this is what they end up doing." I think it's below zero of a chance that this was what's happening. But if it does, I give you permission, my friend, to clip this out, send it back to me and say, there it is, because you will deserve major props if it ends up being that, Mellow. Okay, next up. Nathikins writes, "If Batroc gets injected with the serum, who wins one-on-one? Batroc or Bucky?" Ooh, silly, I know. I just wanted to support the channel. Well, thank you for that, but that's a good question. Batroc. I think Batroc wins that fight. I mean, Batroc basically beat Sam twice. I mean, the second time he fought Sam, it was kind of a draw. Sam I think Sam was losing that fight. I've watched it twice. Sam was losing the fight, but Sam was able to get the upper hand for a second so he could get out of there because he had to go deal with other things. But I think Batroc with the super soldier serum. Listen, Batroc gave Captain America a bit of a run when they fought each other in Civil War or in Winter Soldier. He gave Cap a bit of a run for his money without the super soldier serum. With the super soldier serum, you know what? No, I'll call it. Batroc wins that fight. I mean, I'm not 100% convinced, 85% convinced, but I'm not 100% convinced that Batroc wouldn't win the fight even without the super soldier serum. I mean, 85% chance Bucky wins that fight, but with the super soldier serum, man, you know what? I'm going to say Batroc wins. I think, yeah, I'm going to stick with that. Batroc wins that fight. All right. The Hero writes, the fact that both the other Captain America candidates ultimately failed to stop that truck from falling is so compelling and symbolic. Yeah, that's a misrepresentation of what actually happened, though. Sam stops that truck from falling, not with his tech, but with every move he's made to earn the trust of Steve Rogers, Tony Stark, and Wakanda. Say, okay, here's the problem. Very nice words, Hero, but that is a misrepresentation of what happened in the scene. John Walker got there. Remember, Bucky was looking up and he saw the truck falling down and then he saw the truck being pulled back up. Walker was saving the truck. Walker saved it because it was about to go over. They would have all been dead if Walker didn't show up. Walker saved it. He was pulling the truck back up, but then he got jumped by a couple of other super soldiers, right? He got jumped by other super soldiers. Nobody was attacking Sam when Sam took his turn at trying to save the truck. Now, I'm not downplaying Sam here at all. I'm not downplaying Sam, but let's look at the scenario for what it was. Walker did save that truck before Sam ever got there. And they would have all been completely fine had a bunch of super soldiers not jumped Walker as he was finishing the job of saving the truck. Like if Sam was in the middle of trying to save the truck and then all of a sudden 3 super soldiers jumped on him, the people in that truck would have been dead. So there's something very symbolic there, yes, but that's not an accurate actual representation of what happened. I think all 3 of them in their way saved that truck. It's just that at the end, it was all set up that Bucky could uninhibited and unhindered step in and finish the save. So the save goes to all of them. The save goes to all of them, in my mind, at any rate. All right, Terry Jackson Chubik writes, I know that you weren't the biggest fan of Sam becoming the new Cap. I wasn't the biggest fan of anybody. Not Bucky, not John Walker, anybody that's not named Steve Rogers should be new Captain America. Anyway, do you believe that they did a solid job showing why he's a good fit? No, but they did not why he's a good fit, because he's not a good fit. And that's a good thing. He didn't fit into Steve Rogers' shoes. He is a completely different guy just taking on the title with big metal wings and all the strengths and things that make him unique. What the show did a brilliant job of was setting up narrative purpose and a character journey of why he would take on that mantle. Not becoming somebody else, not making himself fit into the mold of Captain America. He's his own character that is extremely different from Steve. And this show did a great job of making me believe why Sam would come to that place of, yes, I should take on this mantle. I should take on this symbol for all of my own reasons. And on that level, they didn't make him fit. They just gave me a great story about why he would go there. And that's why by the end of it, I'm like, I'm good with this. It's still not what I would have done. I still wish he had gotten the suit, fought the fight, but called himself American Falcon or something else. But still, by the time it was done, I'm like, that was a beautiful story. And I'm okay with this. I'm on board with it. So yeah, by the end, they got me there. All right, next up. Alex Asturias writes, once Zemo left, the show lacked something. I don't agree. I was disappointed by the series overall. Don't think I am interested in Sam as Captain America. Well, I mean, look, any show or movie, it's completely subjective. Not every show or movie is going to work for everybody. Hell, everybody loves Blade Runner, and I didn't. I mean, that doesn't mean Blade Runner isn't great. It just means it didn't work for me. And Falcon the Winter Soldier, it didn't work for you. Now, I'm okay with Sam calling himself Captain America because I think he's a great character and I understood why he took on the mantle. So I'm good with it. I mean, in my head, Steve Rogers is still Captain America, period, end of sentence, no more discussion. But for the next few years, for a couple of seasons of this show, maybe 1 or 2 movies, including a Captain America 4, maybe a Captain America 5, I'm good with it. I'm good with it. And I think if anything, this show also really took this really truly exceptional character of Sam Wilson and really put the spotlight on him. And I think they did a great job with that. I really do. Anyway, but it didn't work for you as well. And that's totally cool. That's the beauty of the subjectivity of it, my friend. All right, next up. Let's see. Jonathan Castillo writes, who sent in, I was disappointed in the scene where Bucky tells the old man he killed his son. It felt so rushed. I disagree. They should have let it play out more. Thoughts? Nope. I think that would have been a total disaster. I think it would have undermined the beauty of the moment. And remember, you just go back. I talked about this in the pregame show, like before the final episode aired. I said, I don't need this to be long. I need the important thing to happen. Sam confronting his demons and coming clean. I didn't want Yuri's reaction. Because I didn't care. It's not that I didn't care. It says it wasn't important. Yuri's reaction was not what was important to Bucky's character journey or to the story of Falcon and Winter Soldier. Yuri's reaction wasn't important. What was important was Bucky taking that step. And for them to play it out, there's nothing good to come out of playing out Yuri's reaction. It's okay, buddy. I love you anyway. That would have been stupid. I mean, it would have been stupid and unbelievable. I hate you. Get out, get out, get out. Well, that would have been predictable and not necessary for us to see. So I'm not saying everybody should feel about it the way I felt about it. Not at all. But as I said in the pregame show, I don't need this to be a long scene. And there's certain things I don't want to see. And again, what I'm saying now is that Yuri's reaction wasn't important. And I'm glad they did it the way they did it. So yeah, to me, it was borderline perfect. Anyway, that's the way it was to me. To me, it was borderline perfect. All right, Lane Copeland writes, with Zemo at the raft and Walker with Valentina, I can't help but feel like the Thunderbolts are coming. What are your thoughts? Well, that's what a lot of people have been saying for many, many weeks now. I feel... I am more open to it now than I was before. Like before, I thought the idea of Thunderbolts was a bit of a stretch. But as we got through the last couple of episodes, particularly the finale, I'm like, well, you know what? Yeah, they very well could be going there. Maybe not Thunderbolts, but something else that's kind of a different iteration of that. So yeah, Again, I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not saying it's like it's 60%, but I'm probably at the 35 or 40% mark now, which is way higher than where I was before. All right, next up. John Venerable writes, finale felt rushed. Well, I don't agree. Haven't been blown away with either Marvel Disney Plus finale. Mandalorian finales have set too high of a bar, a la Luke Skywalker. I mean, here's the thing, though, and this is incredibly unpopular to say, I know. But the Luke Skywalker thing was just a big gimmick. It was incredibly effective. And I jumped out of my seat and screamed like everybody else. But let's face it. I mean, it's just, you could have had any ending going on with Mandalorian and Luke Skywalker shows up. It would have had the same effect. It would have had the exact same ending, right? So anyway, I think both WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier have both crushed their endings. I think they both completely nailed their endings. I don't feel like it felt rushed at all. I felt the important things played out the way they needed to play out. They didn't spend any more time doing extra stuff that was unnecessary. So yeah, I mean, I thought they did great. Now I'm not saying that the WandaVision finale or the Falcon and Winter Soldier finale like gave me that pop experience, like say Mandalorian season 2 finale with Luke showing up. Yes. But it wasn't as narratively fulfilling as like to me, the WandaVision and Falcon. Like WandaVision and Falcon finales didn't have me buzzing as much as the end of Mandalorian, but days later, I felt a little bit more narratively satisfied with the endings of those shows than with a rando guy showing up at the end who just happens to be somebody we've all been excited about for 40 years showing up, and here he is, and yay! You know, he only had like 5 lines of dialogue, and it just lightsaber. Yeah, it got me super excited. You guys saw my reaction. I was super excited about it. Like, I still puts a big grin on my face, but it wasn't narratively as satisfying to me. But anyway, that's just kind of my take on it. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Next up, Ron Fraser writes, not a big fan of Cap Sam, but I'm good with it now and love the suit. Yeah, I'm there with you. U.S. Agent Origin is great. I'm legit scared of Sharon. Everybody should be very scared of Sharon. And Carli didn't survive. What do you think Valentina is up to? Is she working with Zemo? Your thoughts? No, I don't think she's working with Zemo. I saw a lot of people online theorizing that because she says, our friend Zemo, I don't think she meant that literally. I could be wrong. I could totally be wrong, but I never felt like she meant that literally. Our friend, I don't think she meant that. Now, clearly, and look, she is also clearly working with other people. Now, what they're up to, I have no idea right now. Like, this is a curveball kind of moment. They're clearly just laying some little seeds on the ground for some bigger plans they have later. I wouldn't even dare to venture to go. I think it's going to be very different from what the comics have been. So I don't know. Like, I don't think they're going to have Valentina be Nick Fury's ex-girlfriend like she was in the comics. Although, who knows? Maybe they will go there. I don't know. But yeah, right now I have no idea. I think this is leading into Iron Wars. That's as much of a guess as I have. I think this is going to lead into Iron Wars. And because since I think Sharon is going to be the main catalyst to that, I think because this was all in Falcon and Winter Soldier, they'll go there with them too. I don't know for sure, but we'll find out soon enough. All right. Phil Lee writes, was Carli the MCU's first original villain? Ooh, maybe. You know what? Yeah. I mean, I can't think of any absolute counterpoint she had in any of the comics as a character. So I'm going to say, yeah, I think you're right. All right. Mike Riff writes, with Sam officially taking up the mantle of Captain America, do you think he will actually lead the Avengers? No. Also, his speech with the politicians was great. His speech was amazing because the speech was also not just random. It was the encapsulating of everything in the competing ideologies that have been present in the show since episode 1 and kind of boiling it down and saying, look, you got to ask the question why, and you're not. And you're making decisions without involving people who are being affected by these decisions in on the process. And it was perfectly narratively summing up. As far as, listen, the person who bears the title Captain America is not de facto now the leader of the Avengers. Sam Wilson is like a 3rd or 4th level Avenger, right? And that hasn't changed. Like, he's even Rhodey, it seems like when you watch Endgame and stuff like that, Rhodey even seems to have seniority over Sam. So Sam will be a very good hero in the MCU who happens to have the name Captain America, but he is not suddenly going to become the leader of the Avengers. They're like, well, you were kind of like a 3rd or 4th level guy on the team before, but you call yourself Captain America now, so I kind of guess you're the leader? No, I don't think that. I don't think they're going to do that. Now watch, that's exactly what they do. All right, next up. Scott Brett writes, Sam's Captain America costume was so badass. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier stuck the landing a little better than WandaVision did. I disagree. I think WandaVision stuck the landing a little bit better. But they did absolutely stick the landing. And I agree, man. I think the outfit was fantastic, Scott. I completely agree with you. I love the outfit. Jason Nelson writes, the series finale disjointed with subpar writing. They should make separate shows for Falcon and Bucky as the arcs and backstories are so different. Do you agree? No. I don't think you need separate stories for them. I don't think the key to making shows with good characters is about making the characters be carbon copies of each other. I don't think that's the key to making a good show. I think, something about this is the differences between Sam and Bucky, right? Their connection was Steve. But don't underestimate how powerful of a connection that is and how strong of a bond that is. And again, one of my favorite sequences of the entire series was the boat fixing montage, because they did such a great job with that montage, showing the growing camaraderie, the growing friendship, the growing chemistry between those two characters. And by the end of it, I just loved watching the two of them on screen together. So no, I don't think they should do them separately. I think they should continue working together. But that's just me. We'll see where they go, Jason. All right, next up. Piero writes, that speech Sam had with the politicians really I really felt in my heart. He also showed captain/leadership during his mission with both his team and hostages. Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. I didn't think he was like the de facto leader, but he took charge of a situation, which is what he should do, and he did it completely in a Sam Wilson way, which is one of the reasons they really won me over with the character. They always made Sam act like Sam. They didn't suddenly have Sam break out a Steve Rogers thing or break out a Tony Stark thing. They always let Sam be Sam and let those elements of him come to the forefront. And that's one of the things I really, really liked about it. All right, Danny Sanchez writes, I'm not going to lie, I shed a tear for Carli. Hey, listen, and I'm sure there are other people who did. I mean, I empathized with Carli because of what her purpose was, but it was also the inevitable ending for the journey she was on, considering the dark path she started to take. But hey, Danny, I don't think you're alone. All right. A-Rod 2006 writes, I need to know who Sharon was talking to in the end credits. She was probably just talking to that same flunky that picked her up in the car earlier in the show. Remember in the earlier episode, that woman picked her up in the car and she gave her all the instructions. Okay, we need this and this. Complicated. The situation just got more complicated. I think she was just probably talking to that same flunky. Get our buyers lined up. Like, she clearly wasn't talking to a partner. She clearly wasn't talking to somebody she was working for. Just get our buyers lined up. We're going to do this, this, and this. So I think she was probably talking to the same flunky. All right, Power is Power writes, when are people going to learn not to throw things at Bucky? He's always going to catch it. Yeah, whether it was like the spear at him or the shield or whatever, Bucky's going to catch it, ladies and gentlemen. Bucky is just straight up damn going to catch whatever it is you throw at him. All right, next up, Don IE writes, where has Stark Industries gone? Nowhere. I don't know. I don't know why it would have been brought up in the show anymore. I don't think they mentioned the Coca-Cola company either. That's a pretty big company. Yeah. So Stark Industries is still there. Pepper Potts is running it. But it had nothing to do with their show. So I don't think there would have been any reason for it to pop up in the show, but it's still there. Stark Industries is still there. Let's see. Next up, Gravity Newton writes, the reflection of the suits is a commentary on the impact that Stark has had on the world, just to show how he changed warfare, one world, one people. Maybe because, I was talking the other day too about the fact that I don't like the Iron Manification of so many MCU characters. Like Spider-Man can't just be Spider-Man. He has to be Iron Man Spider-Man. Now Falcon has to be a little bit of an Iron Man Falcon. But again, I still think the suit is great. And maybe it's an ongoing commentary, Tony Stark, but if it is, it's a bad idea. They should just kind of let that go, in my opinion, at any rate. But you're probably right about that, Gravity. All right. Ifran Dagman writes, Marvel has an eye for talent. Wyatt Russell and Chloe Zhao. Oh, yeah, no kidding. Wyatt Russell, again, completely. I liked him in Overlord, but he just crushed this thing as Captain America, as Walmart Captain America. He completely crushed it. Obviously, this show is all about Sebastian Stan, playing Bucky, and Anthony Mackie playing Sam Wilson. But he was such a great addition to this, like just really brought that character to life and did a fantastic job. All right, Steve Rogers writes, by the way, Ifran sent like a $30 super chat to say that. Thank you so much. And again, and Chloe Zhao, oh my God, her directing Eternals. I don't know, like maybe the movie will suck, maybe, but she is one of the best directors in the world right now. And so, yes, I'm really glad they got her. All right, Steve Rogers writes, hey, John, I love how John chose to save people versus going after Carli. So did I. That was a very big come to Jesus moment for him. It really was. Really made me feel for the guy. One of the highlights of the finale was John and Bucky making that Abraham Lincoln quote. It was a very cool moment. It was a very cool moment. Few things can help two guys get over their differences than having to fight back to back in a life or death situation. But it was a good moment. Like, what does the line anyway says? Mercy is sweeter than justice. I can't remember the exact quote, but it was said very well. And just the way they walked off together, it was a really good moment. It was a really, really good moment for the show. All right. Eric Hopkins writes, saw a theory online about Sharon Carter being a Skrull, and they are already setting up Secret Invasion. She's gathering intelligence and weapons for the Skrulls. Again, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. It completely undermines the Sharon character. It undermines the entire story they just told with her. And again, the Skrulls are different in the MCU. Just go and watch Captain Marvel. The Skrulls are different in the MCU than they are in the comic books. And while it's going to be called, Secret Invasion, I think a lot of people are going to be very surprised by how different it is from the comic stories. So, yeah, I think it would be the most idiotic thing in the world to make Sharon a Skrull. It would be a completely out of left field, absolutely random, and completely undermining all the narrative story they've told so far. So it would be a monumentally jackass decision of them to make her a Skrull. And so I'm glad they didn't. And no, she's not going to end up being a Skrull. I mean, obviously they could. They can do anything. But I'm going to step on that they're not going to do it at all. All right. HKR006 writes, I didn't care much for the CGI fights at the end. Marvel needed to do better with the cinematography of those final act fights. I don't know, man. I thought it was pretty damn good. The fight with Batroc was pretty solid. All the aerial stuff with Sam going after the helicopter and all that was great. I respect, your opinion on that, HKR, is no less valid than mine. I'm just saying that I personally saw it differently. I thought it was pretty damn good, especially for a TV show. I thought it was pretty damn good. Again, highlighted by that great aerial stuff that they did with Sam, but that's just my take on it. All right, next up. Ben Burnside writes, I thought the show overall was strong. Not as good as WandaVision, but it was still very good. I was almost as bummed with Batroc dying as I was with Claw. Yeah, I was bummed that Batroc died, but at the same time, I love the fact that it was like, okay, nobody was actually able to take him in a fight. He had to be turned on by Sharon and shot to death. So, hey, the character played out his narrative purpose. I was just tickled that they brought him back for Falcon and the Winter Soldier at all. So I thought that was great. So bummed out that he died. Yes, but I'm just thankful and grateful I got to enjoy him in this series the way that they did. They gave him a couple of great fight scenes. So I was happy. As a fan of the character, I was happy. All right, Bullet 1510 writes, I believe that Sharon is working as a deep undercover agent, working her way into the power broker organization to take it down from the inside. She is the power broker. So I'm not sure what your theory is based on there. So yeah, she is the power broker. They've made that pretty clear. So I'm not quite sure what you're building that theory on. If I'm missing something with what it is you're trying to say, do write into me again. I'd love to hear what your whole hypothesis is there. But I mean, she is the power broker. She's not working her way up the power broker organization. She's the power broker. So anyway, Ben Burnside writes, does that military guy who closed the door before the car exploding of the super soldiers work for Zemo too, along with the butler? No, I don't think so. I think what that whole thing was about, showing us and reminding us just how many people have rallied to Carli's cause. That even one of the military guys was one world, one people. But I don't think he's the one who planted the bomb. I mean, that was Alfred. I think that guy probably died in that explosion. I don't know that for sure. But since he was closing up the back, he probably got into the front of the truck and probably died in the explosion. So my speculation is that no, he was not working for Zemo. I think he was one of their supporters. And I think that having him be there was a reminder to us as the audience just how wide Carli's influence was. That's my take on it at any rate. All right, next up. Simon writes, regarding that scene where John Walker dropped his shield to save the delegates in the van, would you consider that to be Walker's redemption from being considered the bad guy or future threat? I mean, it was his come to Jesus moment, right? He had a choice to make in that moment. Do I go after her and get revenge for the death of Lamar? Or do I do what a hero would do and save those people? And he struggled with that decision, but made the right decision. Is that his redemption? Maybe. I remember at the end of the day, he killed an enemy combatant. Yes, he crossed a line. It was a downed opponent. It was still a super soldier that was part of the group that ended up killing Battlestar. But you can explain your way around it by saying it was still an enemy combatant. It was in the midst of battle, even though we know he was a down defeated opponent. Steve never would have approved of that, all that kind of stuff. But he could have gone down a very dark path and chose to go a different way. And I think that speaks to the complexity of the character and why I liked it so much. So yes, I would consider that a redemption moment. I maybe not the ultimate redemption, but a redemptive, let's call it that. Not a redemption moment, but a redemptive moment. I'll call it that. It is a redemptive moment. Not as complete as a redemption moment, but a step in the right direction. So I'll say that. Again, adding, Simon, to the complexity of the character and how great I think the character is. Anyway, great question. Thanks for sending that in. All right. Next up, Mario Man 94 writes, I like that Isaiah admitted that he may have been wrong. Also, if you noticed, he was much more clean cut, almost more proud. Yeah, again, it's a good trope in these shows to visually communicate where a character may be internally. And so I don't think that was by accident. And I love the fact that he was in a place that he could be won over by Sam, just like people like me are being won over by Sam. Isaiah was being won over by Sam as well. His hope, his optimism, combined with his heroism and his actions, makes for a pretty compelling person that somebody like Isaiah can respect and maybe even make him look at the world a little bit differently. So I agree with you. That's a good observation, Mario Man. Khalil Frederick writes, do you think the Last Supper do you think the last super soldier flag smasher from the Hudson will be coming back? Also, not all high-tech suits are Iron Man suits. Oh no, they just all have built-in AIs with heads-up displays that give them all the information they need. And Jarvis, where's this? Oh, Red Wing, where's this and this? And blah, blah. I'm sorry. It is what it is. You can semantics all you want with this thing. It is what it is. But all Iron Man, Spider-Man, now Falcon, they all have the heads-up displays with their built-in AI, and Red Wing can just, Red Wing is a self-aware sentient thing now where you can just say, hey, Red Wing, find out if somebody in that helicopter has helicopter training experience, helicopter flight experience. And Red Wing just knows what that means. Okay, flying over and blah, blah. He's got his heads-up battle display. He can see wherever, even though there's a smoke screen, his heads-up display can show him the footprints of where people went and blah, blah. I'm sorry. You can semanticize it all you want. It's making him an Iron Man suit. And Tony's not the one who gave it to him, like he gave it to Spider-Man. This one was from the Wakandans, but still, it's the Iron Manification of yet another character. And I dug it. I dug the suit. I thought it was great. I love the way they showed Sam using it. He used it to great effect. But it's just another version of an Iron Man suit. Anyway, that's just me. All right, next up. And no, I don't think the last super soldier got away. I think they probably got him. All right, next up. Ben Burnside writes, is Bucky allowed to just tell the doctor, peace out, to going to his counseling appointments like that, like how he did in that episode? Where does Bucky go now? No, probably not. I think if you're going to be a little bit real about it, the doctor is going to send him a note. That's nice, Bucky. Your ass gets back into my office on Wednesday, or you're getting arrested again. So I think that's probably how that needs to play out. I get it. I love it. Bucky felt like he had found his peace, but it's ultimately the doctor who's going to tell him when he's done, not the other way around. That's a good observation, Ben. All right, next up. JDS writes, imagine being so mad Steve chose to live in the past with your great aunt that you then decide to burn down the government. LOL, just kidding. Sharon is not playing. Yeah, again, it was, some people, don't laugh though, JDS. Some people are actually saying, well, that was her motivation because Steve, that she had one kiss with Steve. She had barely, it was her country betraying her. It was her country betraying her. And I think that is as good of a motivation for a supervillain turn as you're going to see. I think that's as good of an excuse or reason as we're going to see. All right, Courtney Haynes writes, I know you weren't big on calling Falcon Cap. I wasn't either. But thinking about it, it makes sense. Steve Rogers is the type of person who wouldn't want the Captain America moniker bigger than himself. Who would want the Captain America moniker bigger than himself? Again, my basic thoughts on that remain the same. Not everything should be a mantle. Steve Rogers was Captain America. Captain America is Steve Rogers. It's a person. It's one person. The next person, just like when I left Movie Talk, the next person to host Movie Talk didn't start calling themselves John Campea, right? I'm John Campea. The next person can be all the great things that make them who they are, but I'm John Campea. They didn't come in and start calling themselves John Campea because I am John Campea. Just like Sam Wilson is Sam Wilson. He's Falcon. He's not Captain America. Steve Rogers is Captain America. Anyway, I'm just not big on the whole thing. See, something like Black Panther is different because narratively, Black Panther is a part of the thousands of years history of the Wakandan people. For thousands of years, there has been a Black Panther, and that has been by design a mantle they get and a responsibility that is passed from generation to generation. So they've had untold numbers. Steve is Captain America. There wasn't like there was 20 Captain Americas before Steve. He is Captain America. But again, the show did a great job of bringing me to a point where I'm good with Sam still very much being Sam and not a carbon copy of Steve, and why he took on the moniker of Captain America. That is what great storytelling can do. That even when a story doesn't do what you want it to do, like me, it didn't do what I wanted them to do. Great storytelling brings me to a place of going, okay, I still didn't want them to do that, but I'm good. I'm good that they did because they did it so well in the narrative. And that's what really made it work for me, Courtney. All right, next up. Casey McNatt writes, one of the main problems I had with this episode was the way that Batroc went out. To me, it was great. I didn't want somebody beating Batroc in hand to hand. So the fact that Batroc had to get taken down by as Mr. Kim would say, a sneak attack and get a couple of slugs put in him, I'm like, yes, sir. If Batroc's got to go out, that's how I want him going out. I don't want something besting him and beating him in a fight. I want him to go out that way. So me personally, Casey, I got to say I was pretty happy with it. But I say that as a George St. Pierre fanboy, of course. RFJ Cosplay writes, with John Walker being U.S. agent, is it possible that we get the Thunderbolts? Oh, we've talked about that already. And if so, could we have a Civil War II with the Avengers versus Thunderbolts? No, that's really no fight. That's no fight. No, I don't think they're ever going to do Civil War II. I mean, well, John, in the comics, there isn't. It doesn't matter. I really don't think they're going to go Civil War II. And Thunderbolts, I'm still not willing to say there's going to be a Thunderbolts, but I think it is a greater possibility now than I did a few weeks ago. So they very well could go that way. We'll see. All right, next up. Christina B writes, Sharon slow-mo out of court with a little smirk was very Emily Thorne, because from her show that Emily Van Camp did, whooped out loud at Sam's entrance with the suit. Yeah, it was a great, listen, I've talked ad nauseum about the suit. I think it's great. We know that. Okay. That post-credit scene was great. And the reason I thought it was a great post-credit scene is not only because it gave Emily Van Camp that nice little smirk and whatever, but it did what I believe sets up Iron Wars. Now, again, maybe Sharon Carter is completely unconnected to Iron Wars, but that's the way I think they're going. So we'll see. All right. Dennis Samaro writes, I flipping love that new Falcon America suit. So do I. They ripped it straight out of the comics. Wakanda needs just to make all the suits from now on moving forward. Again, and it's going to be, like I said, like everything else in the MCU, even Cap himself, right? Steve himself, from movie to movie to movie, there were always changes and differences in the costume. And I think we're going to see changes and evolutions in the costume that Sam wears as well. But understanding where it came from, why Bucky would have had them made it that way, it fit perfectly narratively, and I thought it looked badass, so I was all about it, Dennis. Thanks for writing that in, man. Courtney Haynes writes, would want to make the Captain America moniker. Oh, is that in reference to what you were saying? Yeah, no, I think I got what you were saying there. Moniker, because, yep, totally got what you're saying there. Thank you for clarifying nonetheless, Courtney. All right, Israel Salazar writes, what happened with Zemo saying that he knew the broker a while back by reputation? It doesn't seem like Agent 47 has been the broker for that long. Yes, but that goes into the speculation that there could be a Dread Pirate Roberts situation. Of course, for those of you who've not seen The Princess Bride, which, what the hell have you been doing with your life if you have not seen The Princess Bride? Start making better life decisions. Anyway, of course, the Dread Pirate Roberts was this villainous pirate character who's been around for a long time. But as we find out, Wesley was not the original Dread Pirate Roberts. He was given that title by somebody who came before, and that guy wasn't the original Dread Pirate Roberts. So the Power Broker is probably something inherited by Sharon, either by force or by, or gifted to her, probably by force. She probably manipulated her way to it and probably killed the previous Power Broker. Either way, she's now Power Broker. So it has to be a bit of a Dread Pirate Roberts, because otherwise, you're right, Israel, it makes no sense. Timeline-wise, it doesn't equal up. It doesn't add up. So it has to be a Dread Pirate Roberts situation. So we'll see how they're going to explain that as we move forward. But it's a good observation, Israel. All right, Max Gomez sends in like a $50 super chat. Thank you, Max, for supporting our channel on that level, man. That's very generous of you. And Max goes on to say, would have loved to have seen more episodes. I completely agree. 6 episodes is not enough. For decades, television was able to make great television at 20 plus episodes a season. Now the new thing is to make then it became like 12 episodes, and then it was 10 episodes, and then it was 8 episodes, and now it's 6 episodes. And I'm sorry. If you're good at telling stories, you can tell stories that go longer than that. At any rate, I won't go off on my whole spiel about that whole thing. But anyway, let's finish what you're saying. Not a fan of the miniseries model personally. Adding to that, I will hold my hands up and say that I was not a fan of both WandaVision and Falcon Winter Soldier. Boy, was I wrong. Both have impressed me. Yeah, listen, I have had a blast with them. And I'm okay with the miniseries format. Let's be clear. Like, WandaVision was a limited series. It's a miniseries. It's a one and done. I'm totally good with a limited series. If you've got a great story to tell it. It looks like Falcon and Winter Soldier isn't a mini-series or a limited series. It looks like there is going to be a season 2. That whether they call it Falcon and Winter Soldier, or whether they call it now Captain America and Winter Soldier, or whether they call it White Wolf and Captain America, maybe they put a little bit more of the focus on Bucky in the next season, whatever. But yeah, my one complaint though is I'm not a big fan of these really hyper short seasons. Whether it's a limited series or not, I'm not a big fan of these hyper shortened seasons. Now, you can make the argument, and there's a good argument to be made, that, John, listen, if you want cinema quality in something like an MCU where it's not just scenery, you got to have a lot of special effects, and you're going to have a lot of CGI, and you're going to have a lot of this and that and the other thing. You can't do 16 episodes cost effectively. Now you're talking about stretching out the budget over way more episodes, and it's not going to have as rich of a cinematic experience feel as a movie does. Whereas with this, the idea is to give every episode a feel like you're in the movies. That's a good argument. I concede that point. That is a good argument. I still overall philosophically would like to see longer seasons. I don't have an answer for you risk then making it feel lower budget because that money has to stretch over further. They're going to have to figure out a solution to that problem. I totally concede that is an issue. But I'm with you basically on that. I want longer seasons. Still, that being said, I have thoroughly enjoyed WandaVision and now Falcon and Winter Soldier. I have had a undeniably really great time watching these things. Not everybody loves them, and that's cool. I can only speak for myself, but I have had a remarkably good time. Listen, this thing could have been like Infinity War and Endgame, or it could have been like fucking Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Inhumans. Fortunately, they've been more like good MCU instead of bad MCU. So I have really, really enjoyed it, Max. Anyway, dude, thanks again for supporting our channel on that level, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. I appreciate that, man. All right, next up. Max Gomez also writes, also big fan of yours since the AMC Closet days. Thank you so much, Max, and thanks for being with us through all the ups and downs and the transitions and the changes. And now here we are many years later, and thanks for still being here, dude. I appreciate that. All right, next up, J Jav Dav writes, when Isaiah saw his exhibit and hugged Sam, I was near in tears, man. Love that finale. 7 out of 10. Mandalorian is still the king of finales for Disney Plus, in my opinion. And again, I have a little bit of a different opinion of that. I already expressed it a little bit later. But still, it was a very, very good finale. It was a very good... I didn't think it was the best episode of the season. To me, that was number 4. But it was a very good finale. They stuck the landing. And they wrapped up everything that they needed to wrap up, and then they hinted at a few things that would be coming in the future, and it's just a really good job. All right, Donnie Yasu writes, the Isaiah statue brought a tear to my eye. I loved it. I mean, we've been talking a lot about that. It was a beautiful moment, Donnie. Jonathan Vigoa writes, kind of bummed when Falcon saved that van, was really digging the Walker redemption arc. But again, it didn't take anything away from that. Walker got jumped. Right? Walker saved the van. Look, make no mistake about this. Let's be clear here. If Walker wasn't there, that truck of people would be dead because it was going over the edge and they would have all died a minute before Falcon ever showed up, right? So let's be clear here. John Walker saved those people. Now, he wasn't able to finish the save because unlike Sam, who was able to save the truck uninhibited by anybody else attacking him, Walker got jumped by 3 other super soldiers in the midst of finishing the save. So he stopped the truck. Remember, Bucky looks up. The truck's about to go over. It stops going over and starts being pulled back up. And then we see Walker there pulling the truck back up to safety. But before he could get it all the way, he gets jumped by 3 other super soldiers. Great. So now the truck starts to go over again. He had saved the people, but now they're at risk again. Now Sam shows up and he, is able to save it for the second time it needed to be saved. He's able to save it and bring it to safety, but he didn't get jumped by 3 super soldiers while trying to save the truck. So personally, I thought the way they set it up, it was a very good moment for Sam. But it doesn't take the fact that Sam had to finish the save took nothing away from the John Walker save because he's the one who saved those. They would have been dead long before Sam ever got there. But he saved them, then got jumped by super soldiers, and then Sam was able to come up and just kind of finish off the save, uninhibited. So, yeah, but it doesn't take away anything. To me, it doesn't take anything away from Walker's role in that save. All right. Dark Jedi Knight writes, Sam showing what he did for Isaiah completely broke me down. I agree. Old men crying, war veterans crying, wronged people crying, all 3 at once. I was helpless. No, again, man, listen, it was so beautifully, even just the journey. When you watch the whole series, if you just watch the finale out of nowhere, that seems like a really nice scene. When you watch the series, and you followed and walked that path of the characters' journeys to get to that point in that museum, you cannot help but be emotionally invested, Dark Jedi. So I love the way you said that at the end there. I was helpless. I think that was a lot of people. It was a beautiful moment, well earned, well constructed, and well executed. And I thought it was great. All right, next up. R. Smith writes, The combo of Sam's Captain America costume, Isaiah's tribute, and the end title reveal made this alpha shed a tear a la final battle scene in Endgame. They just wrapped it all up great. They were able to punctuate those moments. Sam's great speech moment with the politicians, Bucky having his moment with Yori, the final revolution of Sharon's double cross, and her changing sides and being the power broker. That moment with Isaiah in the thing. They just hit so many of those moments, R. Smith, that, yeah, you couldn't help but be moved by it. All right. Christina B. writes, do you think they are retconning Sharon disappearing during the blip, or are they hoping we forgot? No, again, going back, I think there's a Dread Pirate Robert situation in here. And I think a lot can happen to a character in a day, let alone in a week, let alone in a month, let alone in 4 months. I don't think they need to retcon that at all. I think there's still a lot that goes there. But again, the one problem is the Power Broker's been around longer than that, so there has to be some kind of Dread Pirate Robert situation, but we'll see how they execute that. Right, Matthew Carter writes, this episode was perfect. I don't know if it was perfect, but it was really damn good. The only thing that could have made it better was if when Carli told Sam to stay down, him saying, I can do this all day. Can't wait till next season. Listen, I remember I turned to my buddy Ryan, who was watching the episode with me, and I said, I was half expecting him to say I could do this all day, but what have I been saying earlier in the episode? What they should not have done was try to make Sam like Steve Rogers. And so while I was half expecting him to say, I can do this all day, upon reflection, it was a great decision not to have him say that. Keep him as separate. Don't do anything that makes it look like he's trying to become Steve Rogers. And so at the end of the day, even though I thought they were going there, I was really happy that they didn't. Anyway, thanks for throwing that in, Matthew. And yes, I agree with you. I can't wait till next season either. All right, Chicken Chippy writes, thoughts on Bucky/Yori scene underwhelming? Nope, it was perfect. Again, if you go back to the pregame show, I kind of gave my thoughts on what I thought that upcoming scene should be, and I thought they nailed it exactly the way they should nail it. So I thought it was perfect. Next up, Stormwolf writes, speculation. Sharon/Power Broker will be a big part of the Secret Invasion. No, I think Iron Wars is where she's going to be a big part. She won't be a Skrull, but it will be implied as such. She's preparing for it. No, I think it has, again, when you hear her say, okay, we don't have super soldiers, but we're going to have now access to all this government tech and technology and devices. We're going to have access to all of it. And then we look at what is the synopsis for Iron Wars. What happens when all these techs and devices falls into the wrong hands? I mean, right? It fits. So I don't think it's Secret Invasion. I mean, maybe it could be, but I don't see any connection there at all. But what did Falcon Winter Soldier have? Had Rhodey. Rhodey is going to be the main character of Iron Wars. Iron Wars is about technology, government tech and weapons falling into the wrong hands. And what did we just found out from Sharon at the end of Falcon Winter Soldier? She's now all about getting the tech and weaponry and all that kind of stuff into her wrong hands. So I don't think it's Secret Invasion. I think it's going to be Iron Wars. We'll find out, though. I mean, could be wrong. All right, Ron H. writes, could Sharon be a Skrull? No. At the end, she may have just been dealing with her wound, but perhaps was hiding some kind of alien guts exposed by the gunshot. Nope. It would both be the most idiotic thing Marvel could do. There is no purpose or point to her being a Skrull. Plus, it completely undermines all the great narrative work they've done with that character, making her the first Marvel character, really, who's been a hero in several movies, now turning bad. They would just be pissing all over that. So, no, I don't think she's going to be a Skrull. All right, and it would be a totally horrible decision for them to do. That CAD guy writes, when Emmy season comes around, do you think Carl Lumbly will be nominated for his portrayal of Isaiah Bradley? No. I mean, there may be other things. It's not that his portrayal wasn't great, because he was great, but it was also extremely small. Like it was like, I think he had 3 scenes in the entire series. Now, granted, in the awards ceremonies, supporting actors have been awarded for sometimes but it seems extremely small. I just don't think he was in the show enough to even get a supporting actor thing. So I'm going to guess no. But not because his performance wasn't great. It's just he had 3 scenes. So I'm going to guess no. Anyway, Natasha Scott writes, people thinking Steve is on the moon are disillusioned conspiracy theorists. Listen, all we know is this: Steve is somewhere, and them keep dropping these lines about, I heard he's on the moon. I'm just saying it would be poetic if that's exactly where it ended up being. So look, I'm not willing to put money on that. Clearly I'm not. He could be in Tahiti sipping Mai Tais. But again, the fact that it keeps being brought up, I think it's interesting. All right. Lamelli KH2 writes, Sam going back to his counselor roots to talk down the senators was the biggest icing on the cake. As a black guy, this show means so much to me. Again, the reason it was perfect. The climax, with Steve is battling who he's got to battle, whether it's Red Skull, whether it's Bucky, or whether it's Iron Man. He's got to battle who he needs to battle. Sam, they made the ending Sam being Sam. His ability to communicate, his ability to let people look at things from different points of view, to look at themselves from a different point of view, all that kind of stuff. It was great because really the big final fight wasn't Sam versus Carli or Bucky versus Carli or whatever. The big final conflict, the big final confrontation was Sam being Sam and saving a bunch of people by talking to the GRC people. It was the perfect way to end that sequence. So I agree with you, man. All right. Anyway, next up, Arturo Castro writes, I know you don't want Sam taking the serum because it would make him like Steve, but I believe he has to take it. He has lost to Ant-Man, Spider-Man, Winter Soldier, etc. He needs that serum to fight. But again, the things that make Sam so special isn't that he's the best fighter. He wins a lot of fights too, but he's not the most powerful guy. He's not the toughest guy on the block. All right. Spider-Man has the powers of the gods. Okay. Yeah. Ant-Man, I think he was just caught very, very off guard by what Ant-Man was and what he could do. Right. Ant-Man got the upper hand on Iron Man too. Don't forget that. Like in Civil War, he got inside there. Ooh, yeah. He caused a lot of havoc. It's a very unique power. But no, the key to him now is, well, like, listen, what cannot become the answer is, well, give them an Iron Man suit, or, well, give them the super soldier serum. Make them all the same. Make every single one of them the exact freaking same. No. He gets to be a different kind of Captain America. He's not Steve Rogers, he's Sam Wilson. And he's going to use the things that make him unique to save the day. The answer for Sam is not to make him more like Steve. It's to make him more like Sam. And so, yeah, guess what? You know who else doesn't have? Here's the thing. Well, he's got to have an Iron Man suit, or he's got to have the super soldier serum, because else, guess what? Black Widow has no superpowers. Last time I checked, she didn't have a super soldier serum or needed an Iron Man outfit. Guess what? Last time I checked, Clint, Hawkeye, he doesn't have superpowers, but they don't need to give him an Iron Man suit or give him a super soldier serum. And freaking Bucky, not Bucky, Sam, he's got Wakandan tech, man. They've already given him one of the things. They've already basically given him a little, they applied Iron Manification onto Sam already a bit. Why does he also need the super soldier serum? When Natasha doesn't need either. And Clint doesn't need either. Oh, you can't really be that unless you've got the super soldier serum. Black Widow's been one of the most key important figures. I mean, was leading the Avengers during the blip. She doesn't have no superpowers, and no Iron Man suit, no super soldier serum. So I disagree, Arturo. I completely disagree. The key to making the MCU as interesting is not to continue the process of taking all the characters and then just making them the same. By giving them the same super soldier serum, same Iron Man tech, whatever. And they've already went halfway with Sam giving him Wakandan tech. Okay. But he doesn't need the super soldier serum. He does not need that. All right, Ron H. writes, as a Filipino-Canadian, I did enjoy the fact that the GRC woman who took over the helicopter was a Filipino who was a part of the Philippine Air Force. I didn't even know the Philippines had an Air Force. It was funny. My wife and I, for those of you who don't know, my wife is Filipino. And I don't know why this just brought this up. And I said, I didn't even know the Philippines had an Air Force. I just didn't know that. I honestly didn't know. It reminded me not long ago, Ann and I were watching a Joe Coy, and if you've never watched Joe Coy is hilarious. But if you are either Filipino or related to any Filipinos or are close friends with any Filipinos, whatever, you got to watch Joe Coy. The dude's hilarious. But it reminds me of that little joke when I just said I didn't even know the Philippines had an Air Force. Joe Coy was like, man, we used to have rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I know a lot of you people are like, what? I didn't even know that Filipinos had breakfast. Yeah, here's a Filipino breakfast. Take last night's dinner and add an egg. And I remember Ann and I were watching this, and Ann just about died. Ann was like, that's totally life growing up. Take last night's leftovers from dinner and add an egg. And it's Filipino breakfast. I wouldn't know that. I did not grow up Filipino, but my wife just about puked. She laughed so hard at that. Anyway, yeah, so there you go. But yes, it was good to see a little Filipino representation there in the series there, Ron. All right. Sriram writes, great show, big Falco. I don't know what that means. Oh, from India. Anyway, yes, I thought the show was great. I enjoyed it. Glad you did too, Sharam. All right, Casey McNatt writes, it's interesting that this show made some people go from hating John Walker to liking him at the end. Crazy how that works. I mean, I still don't like him. But I love the character. I love hating him, but I'm also, again, he's just so rich because we've said all along, I love the way they introduced him. Episode 2, they introduced him with this guy with just dreams of doing great things, of being a hero, of not looking for personal glory. He just wants to do the job. He wants to protect people. He wants to make people feel safe. He wants to try to live up to the massive shoes that he has to now fill in Steve Rogers' shoes. And that's what he wants to do. And that's where his heart is. But he's also got issues that come along with that start to play very darkly into his character. And I have loved his presence in the show, even though I was never a fan of John Walker, but I love him in the show, if that makes any sense. Anyway, next up, Z Benally writes, Sam now has a new red wing, white wing, and blue wing. Oh, I see a little bit of play on words there. I see what you did there. All right, R. Henry 1980 writes, hey, John, do you think Sam will just hand back the shield and the title if Steve is brought back without having resentment? Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, all you got to do you got to understand Sam's loyalty to Steve. Right? I mean, you just go back to the one line that somebody referenced earlier. I do what he does, just slower. Like, hey, he has complete and absolute belief in and loyalty to Steve Rogers. And so, yes, if Steve returned, it's going to be a problem because number one, Steve would never ask for the shield back. And number two, there's no way, I think Sam wouldn't give it back. So you're going to have Sam trying to give it back to him and Steve saying, no, no, no. So it's going to be a fight over making the other guy take it. But yes, I completely believe that Sam would absolutely give the mantle back to Steve without any resentment. I just think that's, you got to understand the nature of his character and the nature of the relationship between the two. It's just like if Bucky had become the new Captain America, there's no way he wouldn't just hand it back to Steve if Steve returned. So yeah, I don't think, but again, the big problem isn't going to be them fighting over who gets to have it. They're going to be fighting over making the other guy take it. So that's how I think that would probably go. All right, next up, Ben Burnside writes, do you think that Walker is going to be assigned for his first mission as U.S. agent to fight the soup Nazi. It's fine. Didn't we just mention the soup Nazi a little bit earlier? To fight the soup Nazi makes sense considering who is again. It's Elaine. A little bit of Seinfeld inside humor there. No, but it is going to be interesting to see, Ben. I mean, all joking aside, it's going to be really interesting to see, like where this whole thing is going with Valentina, with U.S. agent, with whoever she's working with. It's going to be interesting to see where they're going to go with this. Evelyn writes, episode 4 is still my favorite, mine too. If he was wrong about you, he was wrong about me. My favorite scene and Zemo's dance is my favorite moment. Isaiah is the MVP. I agree with most of that. Episode 4, my favorite episode, but the moment of the entire series, I completely agree with you, Evelyn. The moment of the series was that if he was wrong about you, that means Steve was wrong about me. That is one of the most meaningful, deep, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching, beautifully performed, incredible moments. It was absolutely fantastic. All right, next up. Ben Burnside writes, if I was U.S. agent and I had to fight the soup Nazi just keeps getting brought up. Soup Nazi, I probably would turn on my country. I heard that man's bisque soup is out of this world. Again, listen, if you guys have never seen, first of all, I know there are some of you who have never watched Seinfeld, which probably just either that or The Office are basically commonly understood as the greatest sitcoms of all time. But just go on wherever you find Seinfeld now. I don't know where you can find it now. It's on one of the streaming services. I just can't remember which one. And just, if nothing else, look up the episode of the soup Nazi. Just find the episode of the soup Nazi and make sure you watch it. All right, next up, Al Renshaw writes, hey, John, if Sharon is involved with Armor Wars, which is what I believe she is, do you think it is likely we will see her eventually put on a suit of Iron Man armor? Maybe. I mean, look, what I feel completely fan speculation wise, very confident about is that she is going to be directly involved with Iron Wars. What I don't know for sure is whether or not she will be like the main baddie. If she is, and listen, this is a lot of ifs, okay? This is an if being built upon another if. If she is, well, her and Rhodey, War Machine, who is the main hero of Iron Wars, are going to have a conflict. And there's no way Sharon can have a fight with Rhodey as War Machine unless she's able to take some of them goodies and that technology she steals to build something special for herself. And if she does, so I do think they can go that way. But again, Al, there's a lot of ifs built in there. If she's even involved with Iron Wars. And then if she's involved with Iron Wars, if she's the main villain in Iron Wars. So there's a bunch of things that need to happen, but I believe that is definitely something that we have to have on our radar. All right, JP Bonner writes, one of two. I love amending versus avenging theme. I agree. Sam exemplifies with talking to Carli to the end and with Isaiah. It also permeates through his speech. It completely does. Clearly inspires Bucky. Translates to real world with helping people of color and other issues. It's better to fix a problem than brute force through it. And again, it's not saying that one person's way is better than another way. It's showing a character leaning into what their strengths are to save the day. In Bucky's situation, he was able to navigate it using in Sam's situation, he was able to navigate it in a very uniquely Sam Wilson way. And did it in a way that inspired people and all the things that Captain America, the symbolism of Captain America should do. Steve would have found a way to win the day a different way, but Sam being able to lean into being Sam is what made that transition so successful to me, JP, and why it worked. So I think that's a great way, the way you just explained it. All right, next up. Nicole Blake writes, awesome and well-executed finale, I agree. Wish Bucky's scene with Yori was a minute longer. I'm glad it wasn't, because I didn't want to see Yori do it's okay, Bucky. I didn't want to see that. I'm glad it was as short as it was. But seeing that quick shot of Sarah and him at the end, and poor Sam and his older bro duties will have to step up. So yeah, again, I think we have not seen the end of the story of Bucky and Sarah. I'm not saying I'm shipping Bucky and Sarah. I'm not saying that that's going to become a main thing. I'm just saying It's not done. I think they're going to go back to this. I think this is going to be touched on again in the future, Nicole. And again, that it is one of my favorite, it's a top 5 favorite moment of mine in the entire series. Number 1 moment is definitely if Steve was wrong about you, then he was wrong about me. Probably my number 2 favorite moment is Zemo's Alfred, which is great. Probably my number 3 is one of the scenes to do with Io. But in that top 5 is just, hey, I'm Bucky. I'm Sarah. And Sam Wilson looking at it like, what the hell is happening? That is one of my top 5 favorite moments in the entire series. I loved it, and I know it's going to be revisited. Somehow, some way, to some degree, I think it will be revisited. All right, next up. Cinema Reviews writes, next time we see Walker, do you think he'll have a new and better shield? No. I think it'd be cool well, I mean, a shield, yes, but vibranium or adamantium, no, we've covered that earlier. I think it'd be cool to see him with one of the laser hologram ones or something. I mean, he'll definitely have something, right? He'll have some kind of shield. Probably not his cosplay shield like he brought into the finale. And it's not something that I think will be vibranium. It's not something that I think will be adamantium, but he'll probably have something. To what degree, I'm not really sure yet. All right. Natasha Scott writes, honestly, how disappointed were you when you realized the museum scene was happening, but Steve didn't turn up? Disney Plus, our comics brought to life. I wasn't disappointed. Now listen, here's the thing. What we as fans need to not do is have something we'd like to see in our heads and then have that translate into disappointment if they don't do what we had in our heads. Would I have loved, I mean, I talked about it before the final episode. Would I have loved to have seen Old Man Steve pop up? Absolutely. But did his lack of involvement cause a drop or a disappointment? No. Just love what they were giving me. Would I have lost my damn mind if Steve Rogers had showed up? Of course I would have lost my damn mind. But did it hurt the show? Did it cause me disappointment that he didn't? Like I was sitting there waiting for Steve Rogers to come around a corner during this beautiful moment. Look, because if I was doing that, if I'd just been sitting there looking at every edge of the screen, while they're in the museum for Old Man Steve to come walking in, then I would have missed out on the beautiful thing that played out on the screen that was there. Of Sam bringing in Isaiah, showing him the monument, the eyes on Isaiah, the hug. I mean, I would have missed that if I'd spent my time looking for the thing I wanted to see happen, right? So did I want that? Absolutely. Was I disappointed that it didn't happen? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But hey, it's a great question to ask. All right, let's move on here. Next we got Olu RJ writes, the finale was masterful, Superman-like kind of story. Fight, show restraint, and talk when either is required. Marvel showcases their superiority again. Listen, I'll tell you what, man. One of the things, Marvel continues to do this, and it's just incredible to me. They continue to break new ground for themselves. I'm not saying they're doing things that nobody else ever has done before, but they continue to break new grounds for themselves. After 13 plus years of doing the MCU, they are doing things they've never done before. We saw that in spades in WandaVision. We're seeing it again with such thematic, new directions that they did with Falcon and Winter Soldier, doing things they've never done before. It was really, really well done. Again, I still give the edge overall to, say, WandaVision. I still give the overall edge to WandaVision, but it was fantastically done. I absolutely loved what we got. And man, it just makes me even more excited for Loki. All right. Next up, we've got Jason A. writes, just thought of how badly I want one of those Cap PSAs they have in Spidey films, but with Sam in No Way Home. I'll tell you what, Jason, I'm going to be shocked. I never thought of that, but I am now officially going to be shocked if they don't do that. I think they're absolutely going to do that. Now that you mention it, I never thought of it before. I think we are definitely going to see a Captain America PSA, but it's going to be with Sam Wilson. Again, Jason, I never thought of it before, but now that you've planned that in my head, I can't imagine that they're not going to do that. And when they do, I'm going to remember you said that. All right. Thanks for that, Jason. Next up, Millie Dancer writes, I appreciated this show on a number of levels. I appreciated the hope in the end. I am glad it wasn't all Debbie Downer and emotional. I mean, listen, there is a place for that stuff, like the heavier emotional whatever. There's a place for that. It can move us in ways and sometimes relate with us in ways that other types of material can't. But there's also a place for the other stuff like this and what they did. And I agree with you, Millie, they did it effectively. When he's bringing Isaiah into the museum where he's talking to the GRC people, you feel that hope, you feel that optimism, and there's a place for that as well. So I don't think one is better than the other, but you got to know which one is the best for the story you're telling, and then do you execute it right. They definitely identified it right in Falcon Winter Soldier, and they definitely executed it. All right, thanks for sharing that, Millie. All right, Drew H writes, I agree that Sharon is now full heel. I don't think that she'll remain and end that way, though. I do. I do, not 100%, but I do, and frankly, I'll be a little bit disappointed if she doesn't. I think she is now the bad guy. Anyway, do you think that there is a likely chance that Sharon and Old Man Steve will meet face to face again? Yes, I do. I'm not sitting here saying it's 100% that that's going to happen. Not at all. But do I think, if you're asking me, do I think that there is a likely chance? I'll say, yeah, I think there is. And nothing will more cement the fact that I am now a bad guy than a face-to-face with Steve and basically telling him to go F himself. I tried doing things your way, Captain America. I tried doing things Aunt Peggy's way. I tried most of my life doing it that way. You know what it got me? Nothing. You know what doing it this way has got me? The world. And I think that's a great way to do it. So yes, I want to see that. Now they might do something completely different for sure, but I think that would really put an exclamation point. She could have that conversation with Sam, wouldn't have the same effect. She could have that same conversation with Bucky, not the same effect. She could have that same conversation with Nick Fury, not the same effect. Having that conversation with Steve, whether it's a young or old version of himself, incredibly effective. Right. Rodrigo Merg writes, Sharon will be revealed as a Skrull on Secret Invasion. Absolutely not. It would be completely random. It makes no sense logically, and it would be an absolutely idiotic thing for them to do. All right, Millie Dancer writes, the costume looked great minus the headgear. I actually really dug the headgear. I'm not going to lie. I dug the headgear. But to be fair, John, he has no powers. He needs a heavy-duty suit like Iron Man. Really? So Black Widow needs an Iron Man suit? So Falcon or Buckeye, you want to say Buckeye, Hawkeye. You know what? I was watching a Milwaukee Bucks game a little bit earlier. The Bucks were playing, I think the Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Hawks a little bit earlier. So I keep wanting to say Hawkeye, but I'm saying Buckeye. Anyway, Buckeye needs, that's funny because Black Widow has been in the MCU pretty much from the beginning, as close to the beginning as you can get. And she's never needed an Iron Man suit. Hawkeye's been around since Thor. Since the first Thor movie. He's never needed an Iron Man suit. And he's a core level, he's a core member of the Avengers. Unlike Sam, who was brought in as an auxiliary member, he's a core member and he doesn't need it. Just saying. So if Black Widow can be Black Widow and not need an Iron Man suit or a super soldier serum, and if Hawkeye doesn't need an Iron Man suit or a super soldier serum, why does Sam? I'm just saying. But listen, don't misinterpret me saying that as if me saying I did not like his suit or the way he used it. We've clearly established I love the suit, and I really did enjoy the way he used it. But to say that he has to have it, well, there are other characters who don't have to have it, so why not them? That's just me saying. That's all I'm saying, Millie. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for our open spoiler discussion of Falcon the Winter Soldier, the season finale. Guys, thank you so much for all of you who sent in your thoughts and theories and opinions and everything. It was great to have. And also you supported the channel as you did it. So we're all very, very thankful for that. End of the day, guys, I didn't quite think it was quite as good as WandaVision, but a huge win. Huge win, terrific finale. Wasn't the number one episode of the series. I still think that was episode 4, but they stuck the landing. They gave me for me personally, and I can only speak for myself, they gave me a truly wonderfully satisfying ending to the Bucky and Yuri storyline. They gave a wonderful ending to the overall story arc with Sam talking, using his Sam Wilson skills, talking to the GRC members about the whole situation. I loved the Sharon turnout to be Power Broker. The Isaiah stuff, oh my God. I love seeing George St. Pierre. Zemo was everything we wanted Zemo to be. The Io appearance with the Dora Milaje and John Walker, played by Wyatt Russell. I mean, everything just worked to me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And this has all left me in a place of being nothing but even more excited now for Loki, which we just have to wait a number of weeks for to finally get that. Anyway, guys, that will do it for me for our Falcon and the Winter Soldier spoiler discussions. Don't forget, guys, tomorrow, the John Campea Show at its new time. We are going to, at least for a month or two, we're going to experiment with a new start time for the John Campea Show. The John Campea Show normally has aired at 10 a.m. Los Angeles time live. It is now going to go live at 12 noon Los Angeles time, so 2 hours later for wherever you live in the world. And we'll see how that goes for a month or two. And if it doesn't work, we'll go back to 10, but I think it's going to work. I'm looking forward to it myself. But anyway, guys, make sure you join me and Robert Meyer Burnett tomorrow for the John Campea Show. We've already got a bunch of things lined up to talk about. Looking forward to seeing you there. So, guys, remember, do the four main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.